If I say Daphne, what comes to mind? Is it Daphne Bridgerton? Daphne from Scooby-Doo? Within the diabetes world, it means something totally different. It stands for dose adjustment for normal eating. Daphne helps adults with type 1 diabetes to lead normal lives. It helps us keep our blood sugars in check, and it reduces long-term complications. I did this week-long course about 15 years ago when I learnt about insulin pens, and also in 2019 when I switched to the insulin pump. At the end of each course, I walked away with a friend for life. You've heard from Julie in season 1, but today you can hear from Uma. Welcome to episode 5, season 5 of Diabetes Squad. Let's go back to how we first met. I think that would be a really bizarre, and it feels like, I don't know how many years ago. I was trying to do the math and I can't remember when it was.
I think so it's when you were diagnosed, right?
No, because I was diagnosed in 2007, and I'm trying to think, I think it's before I became a teacher. So it must have been 2009, 2010, 2010 maybe?
I think so. It was almost that many years ago.
I know. And it's crazy because when we met, I thought we were the same meaning, like we're type 1 diabetics.
Yeah.
And then I know recently, we started talking through obviously social media, and you were like, oh yeah, but I'm not that. And I was like, what? It doesn't make sense. So how did we go from that to where you are now?
So what happened was, because I was diagnosed when I was 17 years old, right? And then when you were young, you were just classified as kind of type 1, or I really don't know. I really didn't understand. I thought I was type 1 because I was 17. But as my diagnosis went along, because I didn't have ketones in my urine, they were like, okay, so you're not type 1. Let's just try the type 2 medication on you. But it turned out I just didn't have enough insulin reserves, so I need to be on insulin. Okay. And then it was Dr. Kyrilos, and I kept on putting it off going on the Daphne course because I was like, oh, I don't want to do it. And she goes, no, you'll really benefit. Then I was just like, actually, let me just do it.
Yeah.
And I learned so much doing that course. You know, when you've had diabetes, for I think then it was more than 10 years I'd had it. Yeah. I thought I knew everything about it, but I learned so much going on that course, and obviously I met other people.
That's, I think, for me, similarly, I think it definitely was either Dr. Carlos or Lakshmi that sort of bullied me into going on the course.
Yeah.
And I was sort of I don't want to talk about it. I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting, isn't it, this episode? And I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I was very much why do I need to talk about something that I am okay with? I guess I wasn't actually okay with, but I was trying to convince myself that I was okay with it. And then I was like, well, okay, let's just see how it goes. And I think it was during a half term. I don't remember. I think it was an October half term or something. I don't remember. And obviously I met you, we met some other people, and I was hearing stories of that now I've lived that, if that makes sense, because I think I was the youngest. So there was people there talking about all sorts of things that I was like, oh, okay. I didn't even know that was a thing. It was so weird.
Yeah. No, totally get it. And also obviously you've created this lovely community on Instagram, which is great, because then people that are being diagnosed that are feeling a bit lost, there's a community that they can go to and sort of say, hey, I'm feeling this, or listen to one of the podcasts and be like, oh, I can relate to that. Okay, that's normal. Things that you don't get in a consultation with your doctor. Mm-mm. Because, how are you going to remember multiple things to speak to them about? But for me, I learned a lot on that course, but I'm still learning through my journey now. Yeah. I've done a 360 and I've kind of looked at my health.
Okay.
And sort of my well-being and my hormones, changed my diet and my lifestyle to sort of help my diabetes.
Yeah.
And I've gone vegan.
Oh, so
Yeah.
before I thought were you vegetarian
Yeah.
before?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
vegetarian before,
Okay.
and I had to go for an operation,
Oh,
and the surgeon told me, for your recovery, I want you to go dairy free to
oh,
help your recovery. So, in my head, I was like, okay, it's
yeah.
for my recovery. I better do it. Otherwise, my recovery won't go smoothly. And she told me to educate myself by reading a book by Neil Bernard,
Okay.
Reversing Type 2 Diabetes. So I've educated myself by reading that book. And that kind of like changed my life. That was the turning point in where I took my health into sort of my own hands and be like, actually, I don't want to medicate as much.
Yeah.
I want to try and sort of come away from it and make some lifestyle changes. And it was so weird, like, because I made that sort of just gave up dairy,
Yeah.
and my insulin requirements went down, my medication went down, and it was such a
Oh,
positive influence on my diet. Um, yeah, and I'm still vegan 5 years on.
wow. And how would we say, like, so you're not type 1, so it sounds really weird to say this, but
Mm.
so how would you define yourself now?
So I'm early onset type 2 diabetic.
Okay,
And I
that's
think
great.
there's a genetic factor to it as well, because I have siblings,
Yeah.
and the female siblings, we all were diagnosed sort of before, sort of in our early 20s, before we were 30. But I was the youngest, so I was like 17 when I was diagnosed.
And with your siblings, are they still type 1?
They're type 2,
Oh,
early
type
onset.
2.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know, maybe there needs to be some further genetic testing, because we got tested for MODY,
Okay.
so mature onset diabetes in the young,
Yes.
and the Geoffrey Kelson Centre is so good. They sort of like tested us for it, and we didn't test positive for that,
Uh-huh.
but I believe there is so much to explore in genetics
Yeah.
that maybe there's probably another type of genetic link to the early onset diabetics that are
That's
sort of around.
incredible. So you would say in the last sort of 5 years, progressively, you've seen your condition, well, I would say it disappeared to a certain degree. So it has happened over the space of time, as
Yeah.
opposed to automatically, boop, it's gone. But
Oh
it's
yeah.
happened progressively.
Yeah. Because I've changed my lifestyle. I've changed the way I think.
Yeah.
Um, at the beginning, you probably had this when you were diagnosed, when you're really young. You're like, why me?
Oh, yeah.
And you almost want like an instant cure where you can just go and have that full fat Coke, or you can have that slice
Yeah.
of cake and be with your friends and not worry about it. You're so cautious about your
Yeah.
diet and everything you ate. So I'm not going to lie to you. If I want a slice of cake, I will eat that slice of cake,
Yeah.
right? I'll take the insulin for it. But now I've also sort of, during my journey and my lifetime, I've changed my profession. So originally
Oh,
I was a therapy radiographer.
I know. I remember this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I still am a therapy radiographer, but I've chosen to sort of have a bit of a career break,
Yeah.
and I've chosen to become a fitness instructor and
Oh,
life sort of a
wow.
fitness coach. So because I love strength training and
Yeah.
I love fitness, and that also I think has been a big factor in contributing towards my diabetic health and an
Yeah.
improvement to it. So because we all know that building muscle helps with insulin resistance,
Absolutely.
right? So I feel like with the lifestyle changes, and I've been training for the past 10 years,
Yeah.
that has helped me improve my diabetes over the years.
Yeah.
And I would say my turning point probably has been in the past sort of 10 years, where I've started training, watched what I've
Yeah.
been eating, and just had a balanced lifestyle. I still enjoy the cake, but
Yeah.
I don't eat it every day. I eat it every now and then.
Well, this is it. And I have seen, like, on your socials, there's that, do a shout out to that community that you're a part of, which is that fitness one.
Yeah, Body and Beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I train with Body and Beyond. And again, it's a community. We all talk to each other, we all motivate each other. And I think motivation is key. When you have a community, you kind of motivate each other to sort of do better
Yeah.
in the fitness, with your diet, we look out for each other. You know, one of them might say, "Oh, I'm cooking this for dinner tonight." I'd be like, "Oh, why don't you add a bit of this?" You know, it
Yeah.
might improve your protein content.
Yeah.
So as a community, I think when you work together as a community, you feel happier as well. You feel
Totally.
part of something and you feel like, yeah, do you know what? I feel good. And that's what makes me go to training every day. Not
Yeah.
every day when I do train.
No, but I think you're right. There's something in like kind of sharing your load and
Yeah,
sharing your experience and sharing your life with others. So, for example, even when you mentioned about this that I've set up, I never imagined when I first met you that I would be able to. I guess at that point, I didn't really accept my life and where I was. And I still was sort of a bit like down in the dumps about it. And I
yeah,
wasn't fully friends with it. But I think being as a teacher, I've been a teacher for 15 years and seeing kids with it and being able to help them, and then they be able to come to me, or parents coming to me and just talking to me about how we do this, or how do we send this child on an international trip when I'm not going, no one else that's diabetic's going, but how can we support them and we work together to do a care plan, has made me feel like actually by helping that one family and that one kid, why can't it be something that has a wider reach?
yeah, definitely.
You know, and the work that
Yeah,
you're doing has that, because there's people from all age ranges, I have to
yeah,
say, with Body and Beyond. I have noticed that, and I think
yeah.
that's really, really, really nice.
And
Um,
also
yeah,
any shape and size
exactly,
does not matter. You know, it's like
totally.
we're all there because that community, we're all there to make each other feel good about each other.
Yeah,
We want to feel stronger and you want to feel happier. And that's the motto of the organization.
yeah,
That's what we want to do. We just come together to feel stronger, feel fitter, and feel happier. And then ultimately you feel healthier as well. And that has
yeah.
positive rewards.
And what sort of like the theme of like this season is motivation. So there's
Yeah.
so many aspects in terms of you going down this other path and finding the motivation to do this. And, you know, you mentioned the fact that, you know, the surgery implicated the idea of, you know, going vegan, and it's something that you've stuck with. But
Yeah.
on a regular, what does motivate you to find these new, even books and resources
Yeah.
and communities?
I don't know. Do you know what? For me, I just love learning new stuff
Yeah.
all the time. I want to become a better version of myself.
Yeah.
And I want to be constantly striving to improve and help others. And what I love, and this is why I used to love my sort of previous job, was that I was there, you know, a patient will come in, they might be a bit unhappy or they might be a bit anxious. But my goal at the end of the session was to sort of make them feel happier,
Yeah.
confident, and sort of content with their experience of radiotherapy or their any procedure that they were going through. And they would, you know, they'll come out and they'd be like, "Oh, that wasn't too bad." I'd be like, "Yeah, you're fine. You did a good job." You know, and I love motivating people in that way. But also, I used to love motivating the staff that I used to work with. You can do this, you can do this,
Yeah.
and sort of give that encouragement.
Yeah.
And that's what I sort of loved about my job. And now, branching onto this new career line that I'm going down, um, those are the bits that I want to bring together
Yeah.
because I know I'm really good at that. And I want to sort of motivate people to become better versions of themselves. Like if it means they're losing a bit of weight so that they're, for example, they're pre-diabetic
Yeah.
and they need to lose a bit of weight, helping them change their eating habits to
Yeah.
sort of achieve those goals. You know, for me, that will be a massive win because I've helped that person and I've helped them in a way that's made them feel happy to make that change rather than, oh God, I really don't want to give up that cake, or I really don't want to give up
Exactly.
my life and what I enjoy so that I'm not pre-diabetic anymore. You'd be like, actually, do you know what? We'll work together on this.
Yeah.
Let's, you know, improve your diet, improve your lifestyle, create good habits. It's all about habit forming.
Absolutely.
That's, you know, through my journey, through my fitness journey, what I learned is it's not about going on a diet
Mm.
and it's about creating good habits with food
Yeah.
and not eating as if it's running away or, you know, that's the last meal you're going to eat. So, you know, eat as much as you want. It's just creating those good daily habits so that when the time does come to sort of enjoy a lovely meal with your friends,
Yeah.
you can enjoy it and you don't feel guilty for it.
And I think it's interesting. I think with yourself, because you had you were convinced, or I should say, you were told you were type 1 for such a long
Yeah,
time, you've probably also created some negative to a certain degree habits looking at food. From a personal point of view, I hated like family functions because I couldn't calculate the food, whereas if I was eating something at home, which would probably be the same, or if I was
yeah,
eating in like restaurants that I was used to, I could work out using resources that I
yeah.
know what I'm ordering. So I know for a fact that I think now I'm a little bit better, but I still sometimes do look at food and I'm just like, oh, that day I know my sugars are going to go mental. And,
Mm.
has it taken a while for you to break some of those habits as well?
Yeah, do you know, for me, what I learned is, for example, for me, when I'm invited to a barbecue,
Yeah.
right? What's that all about? You go to a barbecue, you're grazing throughout the whole afternoon,
Yeah.
and I just can't handle sort of grazing.
Yeah.
I'm a three meal
Person. Yeah, I get
person.
it. Me
I
too.
have 3 meals a day. That helps control my sugar. Everything's content in my body. The minute my routine changes and I'm eating meals at random times, it does have an effect on my body and it does have an effect on my sugars as well. And that then affects your mood. So
Of
then
course.
if it's like, okay, I've taken my insulin, where's the food? I'm meant to having some food, and you're
Mm.
like, oh, okay, my sugar's going a bit low. Okay, let me go and get that can of Coke, or let me go, and then your sugars are high, and then you're eating, and then
Oh.
it's all messed up. And I think you can understand because you've probably gone through this, where you're like, trying to be polite at these sort of kind of occasions. And you're like, okay, they're serving, like, for example, a wedding and it's a buffet style, right?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, they're serving the food. Okay. And then mains is served like 2 hours later.
After all the speeches and this
Yeah.
and that.
And
Yeah.
you're like, I've taken my insulin for this meal. If I take some more insulin, I'm going to end up having a hypo.
Yeah.
It's like all of those things that you have to think about when you're going like going out for an occasion. And I
Yeah.
don't think people without diabetes don't have to think about that.
No,
No,
absolutely not.
they
It's
don't.
happened to me so many times, including
Yeah,
my own wedding. It's happened to me at my wedding, and it's happened to me at a friend's wedding where like everything went really high and then I compensated. This is before the hybrid loop. So I
yeah,
compensated and then I ended up having like hypos at night and then it just ruins everything because
it
you're like,
does.
I don't have the energy to dance anymore. I have to have that full fat Coke that I really don't want. And now I feel really annoyed. And why does diabetes ruin my life? That kind of
Yes.
thing.
Or sometimes, for example, my husband, he's not diabetic. So if I have a hypo during the night, right? I feel like my cognitive function the next day is
Oh,
just ruined, right? It affects me massively the next day. And I said to my husband, you don't get it because it's ruined my sleep. I've had a hypo. I've been up sort of like an hour or two getting until it gets back to normal, my sugars.
yeah,
And then I've lost like 2 hours of sleep. And then I'm getting up and then I have to function. And I find
exactly.
it really hard to function. And he's like, and he's trying to empathize, but bless him, he can't because he's never gone through it.
Yeah.
Um, but someone that's a diabetic that's had a hypo at night and has their sleep sort of interrupted, you can empathize with that person because it feels like you've been in a car crash or something the next morning.
Literally.
Yeah,
Literally.
literally. And that's how I describe it to my husband. I go, it's literally like I've been hit by a bus and I'm having to get up and get on with it.
Yeah, you
I
need to get up. You need to sort the kids out. You need to do this. You need to
Yes,
do that. Of
yeah,
course.
yeah. And luckily that doesn't require that much sort of level of thinking. You just get on with it. But if you had a sort of a high pressure job or a job that was demanding of your time and you have to think, it's actually quite difficult.
Yeah. I'm that person. I know what that feels like. You're
Yeah,
talking to the pipe piper. I
yeah,
remember doing an inset day with like the teachers. So every September when we do staff training, I do an inset day about the children that are new on roll with type 1.
yeah,
And for example, teach even like literally the TAs as well about which technologies that they're on or if they're awaiting a technology or when they were diagnosed. For example, if it was quite recent, they may not know so much. And then I remember as in this academic year, meaning last September, I started it by saying, sorry if I do ramble a lot. I was up last night at 2 o'clock giving myself apple juice. Then I woke up at 4 o'clock having some glucose tablets. And then I had to wake up at 5:30 and leave the house by 6:30. And it's 9:30 and now I'm doing this presentation. And literally, it was so quiet. It was unbelievable. Then I explained all the bits, and then we had a break, we had a tea break, and two members of staff, like senior members of staff, came up to me and they're like, "We didn't realise it was that bad." And I'm like, "Yeah." Do you know, sometimes when I look spaced out, I am spaced out.
Yeah.
It is that.
And I think people don't understand it unless they've been through it themselves.
Exactly.
And I totally get that, because I've had that exact same feeling the next morning when you're like, yeah, just let my brain turn its cogs for a bit. Just give me some time.
Exactly.
Because it's a new day, a new start, and I need my sort of sugars just to sort of get back to normal again. And it does take that long.
And I think it also is more so in terms of getting back on track, depending on how long you've had type 1 diabetes, however we want to phrase it in terms of hypos, because I think for example, I don't have any like hypo awareness. I would say, well, rarely I have hypo awareness. I guess the only one I might have is I sometimes wake up in my sleep, but realistically, I don't really feel anything like I used to. But compared to somebody that's like recently diagnosed, like they would get like the trembling hand, the sweaty palms and stuff. So I do feel like the longer you've had it, your body sort of tricks you, like it sort of disguises.
And the amount of times I've kind of slept through, like before, like some hypos, I used to get like, sometimes you get the tingling and you get the sweats and you kind of get really hot. And there are times where I've kind of like slept through it, but luckily I've been okay. Like I've woken up the next morning and I've been fine. It hasn't been that dangerously low. It's quite hard, isn't it, when you're having a hypo?
Yeah.
I would say that's the worst part of the diabetes.
I was just about to say, exactly. Would you define that as the worst bit?
Yeah, I would say that's the worst, because when your sugars are high, well, you feel a bit sleepy. Yeah.
It's true.
And you feel a bit drowsy and you're fine with it. But when you have a hypo, it affects your brain. It affects your cognitive function. You end up, if it's during the day, you might end up talking some gibberish, like, or you might be waffling, and people be like, "Oh, she's waffling a bit." You'll be like, "Yeah, my sugar's going low. I should have not gone to that meeting before lunch, because I know that's kind of ruined it." Or actually, there was a funny story. This was when I was really young, and my manager called me into the office. We had job interviews, and she was kind of breaking the news that I hadn't got the job, right? Okay. And it was before lunchtime. I think I was having a hypo. I just cried so much. I just cried and I cried and I cried, and it was so weird. So then she had to call another colleague to kind of escort me and take me for lunch, and said take her for a long lunch. And then it was so weird. After lunch, I was just laughing about it. I was like, "Gosh, my reaction, that was such a bad reaction." But it's because my sugars went low. It was just before lunch. I got given this news, and all I wanted to do was eat some food.
And you were stuck there.
I was stuck there, and I was just like crying. My emotions were like running, and then I said to my colleague, I was like, "God, that was so bad, wasn't it, that reaction?" And she was like, "Got a good lunch out of it." I was like, "Yeah, we got a good lunch out of it."
Yeah, we got an extra half an hour.
Yeah, we got this bonuses to it. But yeah, like little things like that, like, don't go for a job interview if you're like, if you just make sure you've had a good meal.
Totally.
And that you're well hydrated. Check your sugars before you go in. And if you do feel like they're running low, have a few Lucozade tablets, so that it keeps you going through the interview and you're not saying anything silly that you don't intend to say.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, let's face it, when your sugar does go low, you end up, like I said, just talking a bit of gibberish.
Exactly.
because you're not thinking straight.
And it's interesting because there are so many symptoms and so many, I think, in terms of symptoms, the longer you've had it or the more people that you know it collectively, you realize there's more symptoms and more signs that
Yeah.
you were only told about, like the handful, but then
Yeah.
there's others and you're just like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. But even at the moment with yourself, so how would you say you're managing? So you say through your diet, through your fitness,
Yes.
are you still seeing specialists?
I see the consultant
Okay.
probably every 8 months or so, or
Yeah.
every year. And I've been part of that team since I was 17.
Yeah.
And it's great that they keep me on, and I've seen the same consultant.
Yeah.
So I said to her, I'll probably stay with you until you retire.
Oh, I hope she doesn't retire. If
I
we're talking
hope
about
you,
the same person, I know
yeah,
Dr. Darko's gone. God rest him. I love Dr.
yes,
Darko, but
yes,
he's gone.
yeah,
But I really hope that, so we need to save that Central
yeah.
Middlesex Geoffrey Kels
That
Award.
I know, because I've got a feeling like bit by bit it's slow. There's not enough resources there. And
Yeah,
I love that centre. That centre is sort of like the hub of my diabetes care.
that is, yeah.
And, the nurses, I got to know the nurses over the years, and, they retired one by one. A community. Every year I'd go, I'll see the same faces.
Yeah,
And, I'd love to see the receptionist. And it's
yeah,
personal. They know I've got the kids when I was pregnant.
yeah.
They'll be like, what you're having, do you know? And, it was like a family. So one by one, the family is retiring. And I know that Dr. Kyrilos is going to continue to work there, but she's at that time where will be retiring probably in a couple of years.
Yeah, I think
So,
so. Because she wasn't very well. I think it was just over a year ago. She wasn't very well.
yeah.
And then sort of in the middle, I've talked about Lakshmi a lot on the podcast. She's been
Okay.
on the podcast as well. So
Oh, right.
we love Lakshmi.
Yeah.
So Lakshmi to me, like, is just like my queen. Like, she's my number one. Like,
Do you know who
she's
my
just...
queen is?
Who?
My queen is Upkar. Did you
Who's
ever see
that?
Upkar?
No.
Now this is how old it is, right?
Okay.
Upkar was a diabetic nurse that saw me when I was 17.
Right.
She's the same diabetic nurse that took care of my grandmother
Whoa.
that used to come to our house in community care. And back then, diabetes in the Indian community, it wasn't really understood. And she would have to come and give her insulin because her control wasn't that great.
Okay.
So she's been sort of in our family like for years. I mean, she retired, I think, after COVID because she was
Okay.
in her 70s when she was working.
Wow.
Then she took care of me while I was pregnant.
Oh,
And, she's such a lovely nurse that when I was diagnosed, I was 17, I was by myself when I went to see her. And this is me being old. There was a Wembley Community Hospital.
I don't even know about that.
It was near the fire station behind
Okay.
the back. And I think it's a Wembley GP centre now.
Okay.
But it was a little hospital then, a community hospital, and she used to work there. And I was by myself. My parents were at work. I went to see the specialist, newly diagnosed, and I was crying. I was really kind of upset. And she was so empathetic that she actually sort of gave me a number and said, do you know what? I don't normally do this, but for you, here's my number. And if you need to talk, just give me a call. She actually gave, because then it was just landlines. There was no mobiles. She was like, you just give me a call and I'm happy to talk to you, because she could see how upset I was, that why me? Why has this happened to me? And she was a brilliant nurse to me from the beginning until the end, like before she retired.
Yeah.
So for me, Upkar has sort of done a lot for me.
Well, she's a part of your life. She's a part of your
Yeah.
family. She's
Yeah.
had such a huge impact on you that it makes sense that you want to embrace her as somebody that was a part of your acceptance as
Yeah.
well of
Yeah.
having this diagnosis, and
Yeah.
somebody who made it very real. And I love what you said about as well, in certain communities, and we've spoken about this last season actually, where we had Jesh that talked a lot about in the South Asian community about little stigmas that there are, or many stigmas in
Yeah.
fact, and having Dr. Partha on as well, talking about the work that he's doing, especially in India, to raise awareness. In terms of for you, have you experienced anything such as that?
Yeah, do you know what? And this is like when I was 20 and you know, my mum was trying to sort of organize dates for me
Oh yeah,
back in
we
the
know
day.
that.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
And
Yeah.
I'd be quite open about my diabetes. And because I was quite open about it, and let's say the guy opposite, I didn't really fancy him, or, or he knew he didn't have a chance with me, for example,
Yeah.
um, he would say, oh, because she's got diabetes, I
Oh,
didn't want to go out with her further, or she's not suitable. So, imagine how that would make me feel
that's
that I'm
awful.
being judged because of a condition that's not my fault. And then also my parents being made to feel, oh, you got a daughter that's got diabetes. When are you going to marry her off,
Oh
for
yeah.
example, right? And that's kind of like a stigma. And also like another stigma. Oh, but you're so young.
Oh,
You're diabetic. Oh, you're so young. How did this happen to you? It's like, it can happen to anyone. It's fine, you know? And it's kind of educating people around there's nothing wrong with having diabetes.
yeah.
Absolutely nothing wrong. It's part, I think as long as when you start embracing it and letting it become, this is me and I'm happy with it, then you start enjoy living your life and
Yeah.
you know that there's no restrictions. Whereas people almost, when they get a diagnosis in the Indian culture, especially, they feel like their life is over.
Oh yeah, for
Oh,
sure. A
so
hundred
dramatic.
percent. Oh,
I'm
the
not going to be able
drama.
to eat that gulab jambu. I'm not going to be doing this. And you're like, chill. You just can't eat a gulab jambu every day. Just you can have
Exactly.
it
And
every
who
now and then.
does?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, which
But
normal, healthy person wants to
yeah,
consume that much sugar syrup in one
yeah.
day? Like, let's just look at the bigger picture right here, guys. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
Also, the Gujarati diet. Yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Gujarati diet is great in moderate, like not in moderation if you eat your plate right.
Yeah.
If you take out the rice, like I always, when I was newly diagnosed, I always said to myself, you can't eat rice and chapati. I was so
Yeah.
disciplined.
Yeah.
Choose one or the other. And I always used to choose chapati, never rice. And ever since I'm getting the sensor and wearing it, and when I would eat rice, I would see how much it would elevate my blood sugar. Is it as if you're just drinking sugar water, right?
Literally.
And I'd be like, I don't want that in my body. But then you get some Asians that would just eat rice. And I'm like, but you're diabetic.
I
Have you
know.
thought about reducing that carb intake that you're taking there with the rice and maybe replacing it with a chapati or replacing it with some protein or,
Yeah.
eat something else? Don't have that much rice. But it's that mindset and habit forming.
Exactly.
I've always had 2 spoons of rice. That without having 1 spoon doesn't satisfy me. But it's like, well, you need to teach your gut and you need to teach your brain to be satisfied with
Mm.
just a smaller portion of rice or
And
change your mindset over food.
it is about that re-education, and that's what I absolutely love in what you're saying about the mindset, because I think for generations such as ours, we are, I wouldn't say we're spring chickens, like we're not in our teens anymore, but we are open to, as you've mentioned, reading, researching, implementing, speaking to others. But there are people for a certain generation or certain communities that are like, yeah, I've got this thing, and yeah, I'd rather take all this insulin or take this metformin, and I don't particularly want to go for a walk, or not even go for a walk necessarily. I find like after dinner, even just getting up and doing the dishes, cleaning the kitchen,
Yeah,
sweeping the kitchen floor, like what's that, 10, 15 minutes? At least that's something
yeah.
rather than just slouched or sat or doing whatever. But I think it is the mindset and has to alter and it has to change. And, if it does mean reducing a certain carb and increasing another fiber or a protein.
Yeah.
And once again, this doesn't have to be every day. It could be like twice a week just to get you started. Or what I've tried to do is my lunch at school, I always make my lunch at home anyway, but my lunch is pretty much the same. So I know exactly how much insulin is going in at what time, and what happens, it
Yeah.
should be fine. Unless I've got parents' evening and I need to have something else just before parents' evening, then I know it might go a little bit up and down. But I do think it is about altering those habits that you've had for such a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And another habit that I used to have a big bowl of porridge, cup of tea, and then I used to eat 2 biscuits after it. I thought, why did I use? I've just had a bowl of porridge, right? It was a habit because I got a cup of tea. I've got a cup of tea. I'm drinking my cup of tea, so I want to have 2 biscuits with it. But there was no need to have those biscuits. And I kid you not, I stopped eating those biscuits with a cup of tea, and I've sort of lost 2 kgs without even thinking about it.
There you go.
That just shows you how many biscuits I used to eat throughout the day.
Yeah, literally. The biscuit intake in that household has declined massively.
It has.
But it's true. I think you're right. Even if you want, like, it is that thing of having like a cup of tea and a biscuit, or having a coffee and a biscuit, whatever. But it's also like down to things like, oh, I really fancy something sweet. So even as a diabetic, you do naturally, everybody does, special times of the month, you're like, oh, I really would love something sweet. But that doesn't mean you eat a whole bar of, and I had to tell myself this, don't eat the whole bar of chocolate or whatever. Like, it was literally a case of, to get that sweet fix, what could I have instead? So could I have like apple and peanut butter, for example, or should I have like 2 tangerines, or like, shall I have something that gives you that hit, but is it going to give you the spike?
But do you know what's a lot of research out there at the moment to do with dates?
Oh,
and all that information about dates. And do you know what? It is true. I have a lot of dates in my diet. Like,
I'm only allowed them from the 3rd trimester. I'm not allowed them at the moment.
No.
Yeah. We're fine at the moment. We're just going to hold back for a month or 2.
Okay.
And then all the dates will be coming my way. Yeah.
Okay. Because dates are brilliant. Like having a few sort of like walnuts, Brazil nuts or something with the dates.
Yes.
That kind of helps with the sweet tooth. But also, Manisha, like, let's face it, we have our hormones, yeah? Also, how do we cope with stress sometimes? We eat.
Oh, yeah.
I know I am an emotional eater. When I get stressed, or if I get nervous about something, I'll just eat for the sake of it, and I'm not even hungry. But it's a habit that I've kind of formed to cope with a situation.
Yeah.
And I've learned to sort of, like, for example, when I used to work on the machines as a radiographer, when the machine would break down, the first thing I used to be saying, right, where's the box of celebrations?
Yeah.
Not even thinking about how am I going to sort out the machine. I'd be like, right, give me the chocolate. I'll eat a chocolate, eat a few chocolates. Right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this, 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 this. But at that moment, I was stressed because we had lots of patients. We had a queue. I didn't know how I was going to fix the day. But my coping mechanism was to get a box of chocolates, have a few, and then that will help me. And it helped me decide what we're going to do for the rest of the day and how we were going to cope with the patient workload. And that was a sort of a common occurrence for me that I picked up on, that actually in a highly stressed environment, I'd go for the chocolates.
And you probably didn't realize at the time until you took a step back and you thought, oh my God, I didn't even realize I was doing this.
Yeah. And it was great when I became vegan because I was like, oh, none of these
Can't have those celebrations. Like, they don't do vegan celebrations, That's why.
No, they don't. And funnily enough, I don't even eat that much chocolate.
Yeah.
I don't eat it. Doesn't appeal to me anymore.
And that, it's interesting because even for everyday average person, your food habits to alter and grow depending on where you are in your life and what
Yeah.
state at your life that you are. I remember like my parents would, things like my dad even says now that the older he gets, like he doesn't eat as much and he eats much early. And sometimes I'm like, I remember when you were eating at like 9 o'clock in the evening, and he's like, nope, I don't want anything. I'm totally fine. And it's the habits that are changing. But I also feel like as a diabetic, because subconsciously in your brain, you're like, I'm not allowed to eat that, or I shouldn't be eating that, or I shouldn't be having so much on it. And I do find that sometimes you get a bit cheeky. So, like, for example, say like Christmas, Diwali, whatever, like
Yeah.
birthdays or whatever, like, I do find sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go for it. Just going to go for it.
Yeah.
Because
Or
why
don't
not?
you find when you're told to do something that you're not supposed to do, you end up wanting to do it?
Of course. Like,
So I remember at the beginning, they used to be like, you need to not eat this, not eat that. And I used to be like, then how am I going to live my life?
yeah,
You
totally.
know, this is going to be miserable for me. So do you know what? When I was at university, I have to admit, I didn't really take care of my diet.
Yeah,
I was really quite bad with my diet, and which led to me taking a lot of insulin. And back then, I think because I was just on insulin, it suppressed my insulin. Oh no, or no, my estrogen, sorry. So I was on
ah,
just insulin, and I ended up sort of putting on a lot of weight, becoming really bloated. And then it was really weird. This other consultant saw me and put me on metformin, and
oh,
that just helped it completely. My cycles were regular. But it was so weird. Like if you didn't have the right care in your diabetes, like I was just put on insulin and I
yeah,
was sort of just ballooning out without any metformin, and the metformin somehow helped regulate my cycle.
exactly. There you go. And like it's over the years, it's just the advancements have helped, and the care for even the mental health element has really, really helped. It's really stepped up
Because yeah,
with,
I would
for
say that
oh,
was
sorry.
lacking. I would say that was lacking the mental health support sort of beforehand.
Yeah, like there's like resources obviously on like Breakthrough T1D and like other websites and other even like the NHS website and other bits and pieces that is reliable sources, I would say,
Yeah,
rather than the crazy internet world. But like there are experiences that are factual, resourceful, and medically proven, and even the choice element that mums to be have. So even before you conceive, it's just getting your body prepared as well, making sure that your levels, your glucose, etc.,
yeah,
is at an adequate stage for having a successful, pregnancy
yeah,
ultimately. But health for mum and baby has advanced so much.
yeah. No, definitely.
So, in terms of the wonderful world of diabetes and your
Yeah.
journey with diabetes, how would you define motivation?
How would I define motivation? Oh, this is like an interview question. Um, Basically, with diabetes and our sugars, for me, I think it does impact how motivated you are,
Yeah,
like how motivated you are for example, on a certain day. For me, my motivation is when I wake up. Okay, this is going to sound really sad. I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning,
that's not
right?
sad.
Not sad. I go training. I go and I get a bit of training in, and that is what motivates me for the day. So
Good.
it gets me in that good mood. It gives that energy release, and I feel like I can just take on the world.
Absolutely.
So for me, exercise is important because it helps me motivate me and give me the energy to get through the day. And I love morning workouts because that's what I start off my day well, right?
Right.
Um, and what motivates me? My kids motivate me, right? So I'm looking at their little sweet faces, although the 11-year-olds look getting a bit older now, but they motivate me because I had my kids when you'd class it as in an old mum. I was only like 34 and 38 when I had my children, but I am an older mother. So for me, staying young and healthy motivates me to be better with my health. So I want to be able to grow old, fitter, look younger, and run around. And I can still sort of run around with my kids, do activities with them, because I've kept myself in a good condition for them.
Yeah.
And they're my motivation to sort of, because I want to be part of them growing up. I've had diabetes for over 1997. How old? How many years is that?
And many. I can't do the mental math.
I think it's 30 years.
Well, where are we now? We're 2025, aren't we?
Yeah.
Let me have a look. Let's get the
And
old calculator
so
out.
2007.
1997, 28 years.
Yeah. Oh, wasn't too bad. Wasn't
Yeah,
bad.
that's good.
Yeah. So nearly 30 years I've had diabetes. And we all know the longer you have diabetes, the more complications you get.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the long term. So I want to delay that. So by delaying, for me to delay is I need to get control of my diabetes. I need to make sure that my sugars are sort of all in check. And sort of my family, they're my motivation. And also, yeah, once the kids are grown up, I want to go traveling with my husband. I want to be able to
Oof.
hike up that mountain in my 60s. So what I'm doing now is investing in my future. So I'm working out right now and I go to Body and Beyond and I do all the training because I'm investing in my future. I want to be that fitter person that's able to go on those activity holidays where I'm able to sort of go trekking, do that. I don't see myself not doing that. I don't see myself sort of just chilling out by the beach because, I can't move because I've got ulcers on my feet or anything like that. I want to make sure I'm able to do all of those things. So then I know I need to take care of my health because, ultimately health is wealth, right?
Totally. That's a
You,
really good way of saying it.
without your health, who are you in terms of, I know people sort of have high powered jobs that requires them to sort of spend a lot of time and energy. They're stressed out. And with stress, we all know that you end up getting certain conditions.
Yep.
And then they're happy to have those conditions because they're earning that level of money. But is it really worth it on your health? For me, I would say that's a no-no. And that's probably why I sort of decided to have my career break because I was putting so much into my career and I was missing out on the kids.
Yeah.
And my health was kind of suffering from it because I was just like, I want to do this, I want to do that. I was just focusing so much on my work that actually I had to say, stop. I need to prioritize what's important to me. Right now, what's important to me is my health, my mental health as well,
Of course.
and my kids. And that's what led me to kind of be like, actually, let me stop. Let me just stay at home for a bit, spend time with the kids. And it's the best thing I ever did.
I
The
love it.
best decision. People thought, when they thought, what, Una's just left work? Yeah, she's left work. Has she got another job? No, she doesn't. They were like, is she feeling all right? Everybody was so shocked that one day I was just like, actually, I've had enough. This is not what I want. This is not what's important to me. What's important to me is my health, my mental health, and my kids.
Yeah.
It's so important that mentally I'm in a better position to be present for my kids.
Absolutely.
And I wasn't at that stage. I had to sort of stop, reevaluate everything. And it was probably the hardest time of my life, I would say, that turning point.
But how
Over
long were you
time,
in? But how long were you in your career for before you thought I need to take a stop?
just over 20 years.
That is a long time,
Yeah.
though. That's a
But
really
do you know,
long
like I
time.
always saw myself doing it until I retire.
I was going to say, did that have an effect? Having that career, did it have an effect on your management?
Yeah, big time. I ended up eating a lot of sugar. I lost a lot of weight
Yeah.
And I just, at some points, I just wasn't feeling hungry or I just didn't want to eat
Yeah.
because that's the only thing I could control. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. So it's almost like you were being restrictive on the type of food and when you were eating as
Yeah,
a form of having a handle on things when
yeah,
actually the rest of your world was falling apart.
yeah. And also, I was tired. I used to come home and the kids would be like, Mummy, Mummy, Mummy. I'd
And you
give all my
just,
time to them.
yeah.
And then, because I'd come home, sometimes I'd come home late and the kids would want to see me before they went to bed. So I'd go and talk to them. And I remember at one stage, I remember my older one, and I was so tired and had such a shit day. He'll be like, Mommy, I want to, and he wouldn't get to the point quick. And I'd say to him, I'd be like, Vian, I do not have the headspace for this right now.
Mm,
And I was thinking, looking back at it now, I was like, what type of mother says
I
that
know. But you,
to a child? And that's why I was just like, this is not right.
yeah.
I go, this is not right. And it was my older sister that said, I've never seen you ever like this, Uma. And she goes, you either need to give up work or I think she says you need to do something because if you don't do anything, you're gonna end up no good for your kids or work.
Um, that's sad.
I know, and I think when you reach that to that level, you
Yeah.
then realize actually there's more to life.
Oh God, yeah. Like I couldn't
There's
agree more. Absolutely.
there's more to life than just like your career.
Yeah. I do you know what? That's interesting because you as an individual in any circumstances are never going to see it. And
Yeah,
thank goodness for your sister who sort of was like, you need to take a moment and just step back. Because
yeah,
even if you were in it and you weren't feeling great, and like you were saying, like with the food and you were eating this, you're not
yeah.
looking after yourself, there's nothing there screaming at you to make you recognize that this is not the person who you are
But
supposed to
Manisha,
be.
it's like we just don't give up,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
You don't just leave work
No, this is your life. You
without,
should be
yeah,
grateful.
yeah.
Yeah,
You go to work, you should earn money. You
yeah,
should earn money until you're retired. That's what's kind of drilled into us, right?
yeah.
But even my husband, he was the one, he goes, Uma, I don't think you're going to last. I think you need to leave. Like he goes,
God.
you'll get another job, you'll do something. Just like everybody around me was recognizing it. And I was just
Yeah,
like, no, how can I give? I haven't got another job to go to. I cannot just give up work.
yeah.
Like, this is not, and they're like, but it's consuming you.
It
This is
is.
not you. You're changing as a person.
Yeah,
And I didn't feel like me. And it had a massive impact on my sugars,
of
definitely did.
course.
Because the cortisol level, the anxiety and stress of going into work,
It was too much.
yeah, my sugars were always high.
Well, there you go. That's literally
Yeah,
it, isn't it? That's literally a sign that things are beyond control, like
yeah,
100%. And the more you try to mask it, the worse it gets.
yeah, yeah. And I'm so, things in life happen for a reason. I'm a true
Yeah,
believer of that. And I believe that I had to go through that process to be where I am now.
of
So
course.
then I gave up. I didn't know what to do. Still trained with Body and Beyond. And it was the coach there that said to me, Uma, would you consider doing a coaching qualification? I go, why? Do you think I'd be good at it? And he was
Ah,
like, yeah, I think you would be good at it. And then a lot of other people would be like, would you become a fit? Like random people would just, that I know, like my friends, they'll be like, how about would you become a PT? Da, 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 da. And I was like, do you know what? So many people are telling me this. Maybe this is a sign. And I've literally just finished a coaching qualification.
there you go.
There you go, Manisha. If you need a PT, yeah?
Yeah,
A
well,
woman
after. Don't you
PT who
worry.
understands women's health.
Yeah, and the diet that we lead. Yeah,
Yes.
totally.
Yeah.
No,
And
but I
also,
think,
so I'm doing a lot of work on that, actually, coming up with different ideas.
yeah, I think there's a lot in it with finding like your calling and leading to certain things. Like I remember my mum used to always say to me, she's like, you work so hard, like you're working too hard. You're traveling into central London, you're coming back, you're working so hard. You're working on Saturdays because I do extra lessons on Saturdays occasionally with our GCSE and A-level groups. And she's just like, you're always also, you got no time to even pop in, or that classic stuff. And then I remember like I took a step back from senior leadership a couple of years ago. I think it was just after we got back back from COVID actually, and I thought, no, I don't want to do this. Like, why? Like, I just don't want to do this. And that's when I sort of thought, I want to do something else. And that's kind of where like the Diabetes Squad world in my brain happened through conversation, but it was sort of led up by having so many conversations with other people about it and other parents about their children. And
Yeah.
I think in my brain, it just went, I'd rather be up until midnight editing my podcast than up until midnight marking. Like, that's as simple as that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to. And I feel like there are so many points where it was screaming at me that I just wasn't looking after myself, like you said, and I was sort of like kind of like a hamster wheel. I was like constantly like just go, 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 go,
Yeah.
go.
And you're
And I
like,
was
just one more thing. I'll just do one more thing.
yeah,
And you're like, what you doing? Just eat your freaking lunch. But it's weird, isn't it, how our brain works? Because we feel giving that time and dedication, it shows dedication
yeah,
to the job, right? And you feel like being present and showing that I'm working this many hours, my management is going to be like, actually, no, Uma's putting all the effort. And you want to feel valued,
yeah. You want
right?
to receive.
You want
Yeah,
to receive like positive feedback, right?
of course.
And when you don't get that positive feedback, you're like, how come the outcome is like this when I've
Yeah,
put in all my hard work and I'm not getting the results
yeah.
after?
I
And then that's when I realized it wasn't the right environment for me to flourish
no.
in.
And that's it. And now that you've found your environment, like you've got the motivation to help others, or should I say, even before that, to help yourself first, and then in order to get your qualifications, then to help others and help
Yeah,
people even in our community,
yeah.
which is the start, which is sort of like the bread and butter of it all, just everyday
Do
people,
you know,
normal
this is my
people.
passion. I would
Yeah,
love to help educate people about diabetes and the
yeah,
food around it. I would
totally.
love to educate, like, for example, you can, put loads of vegetables in your chapatis and make your chapatis fibrous.
Yeah,
And you can have it with a dal and
yeah,
a dollop of Greek yogurt. You've got your protein, you've got your dal that has protein carbs,
absolutely.
and you've got your chapati that has a whole lot of ton of vegetables and less flour, so you're not having that much gluten. Because I've heard that you can have celiac intolerances with type 1 diabetes or something like
Yes,
that, right?
that's true.
So it's like coming up with different ideas to sort of help with that kind of situation.
Yeah, because it's like the diabetes and celiacs and arthritis and all that sort of world is a part of the autoimmune
Yeah.
disease sort of category. So it can present itself in like variation of ways. But sort of rounding up in terms of what is the message that you would have said to yourself when you were first diagnosed, knowing what you know now?
Uh, it's going to be okay. And Uma, you should have started strength training a lot earlier.
How earlier?
In my 20s,
Yeah.
I should have started it earlier because I can see the benefits of it. But in my 20s, I thought going to the gym was going on the treadmill, on the cross trainer, and on the rower. No lie, that's all I used to do. And I used to really, and that stepper machine.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
used to just break out in so much sweat. I felt, yeah, this is a good workout. I literally used to be dripping in sweat. And I was just like, but now looking back at it, I was like, I got it all wrong. Because what
Yeah.
I do now is so much more better in terms of helping with my posture, helping with my leg, your legs, like working on your muscles on your thighs and
Yes.
your quads helps your cardiovascular health
Yeah, because it's all
because
stacked. Yeah.
yeah, so it helps your circulation. So I was just like, what was I doing? But I didn't want to train with those men that were muscly around the weight area. It was
Yeah.
intimidating. But what would I say to my younger self, being newly diagnosed? It's going to be all right. It's not the end of your life. And you can still eat cake and enjoy it.
That goes to everyone. Of course you can.
Yeah.
Just count the carbs. You'll be okay. Just don't eat the whole cake.
Yes.
You know, that's something just to bear in mind. Just take it easy.
I remember my GP when he first got the results, and he was like, "Oh, you're diabetic." He goes, "Right, stop eating potatoes."
What?
You know, weirdly, I remembered that in my brain. No potatoes for you. So I went home and I'm like, no potatoes for me, mommy. No potatoes. I can't eat any.
That's so weird.
I know, and it's so weird. And you know, I stuck to it for a few months.
Oh,
I didn't eat any potatoes.
This is the lack of education. That's why we need more like diabetes resources and awareness and conversations, especially from all sorts of communities as well, of what is and what isn't. Because to me, like, we'll probably have potatoes a couple of times in the week in like different forms, but like
we all love a jacket potato.
Come on. Do you know what I mean? Or like even like sweet potato, for example. Like there's other variations. It's not just that. But I just think, the lack of education hasn't helped anybody. So the newly diagnosed Uma would have definitely stuck to the potatoes, not like giving it up for a couple of months.
No. And it's just weird now because for me, it feels like such a long time ago when I was diagnosed. And a lot has changed. Like you said, medicine has changed. The support has changed. And also the younger me, you know what? With your sugars, if I'd known that it would affect your mood so much, it would explain, actually, don't go on that date when you're feeling like this, or, or if you're feeling a bit like, like your sugar's going low and you're talking gibberish, just pause and go and get something sweet before you continue, or get a sugary drink. There's probably so many occasions like that where, I might have been on a date and my sugars might have been low and I might have been rabbiting on and I just didn't know.
You had no idea.
Yeah, because we didn't have sensors then. I couldn't easily check my sugar. You'd have to prick your finger. And how many scars have you got on your fingers from all the pricking?
I hated that. I absolutely hated pricking my finger, and I still to this day, when I have to, because sometimes the technology, it takes a while for it to all sync and whatever, but like I absolutely despise it, and I hate other people doing it as well. So it's like I have to do it. I don't want like a nurse to do it, because it just really, really, really find it really jarring. I don't know what it is. It's just, that's the one bit that I really despise still.
Yeah. And a lot of people that are newly diagnosed, they don't like doing that bit.
They'll never know, though, what it's like properly.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, if you don't know what your sugars are, and my thing is, how do you know what you're managing? You need to check your sugars to know what's happening in your body. And another thing, Manisha, there's a lot of like research out there, and it's all coming out on gut health and gut microbiome and autoimmune diseases.
Yes.
With your gut microbiome, and having like, and I think in diabetic care, they need to do more kind of work around that as well.
That's
because I'm looking into it because I'm reading up about it, because I'm fascinated by sort of gut microbiome and increasing my gut microbiome to help my diabetes. But there's a lot of research that has come out to say that a lot of autoimmune conditions are sort of come from the gut.
Interesting.
Or is genetically, it's so important to sort of feed your gut, because that is your second brain. That's your first brain, actually.
What people say, don't they? Like, what do you trust? Like, I always go with my gut instinct. I've always been a gut kind of person.
Yeah.
But there is something in that where whatever you are literally feeding your gut has an ultimate effect on the rest of your body and the functioning of it. So I can fully get on board with that. And I'll actually look into that as well, because I find that quite interesting, because food is medicine at the end of the day.
Yeah. And the only way to sort of make your gut microbiome diverse is to introduce different types of foods.
I told you what a determined and headstrong woman Uma actually is. I admire her motivation, especially getting up so early to go to the gym. Having diabetes for such a long time, I've definitely fallen into some bad habits, such as my hypo treatments. I would just drink a bottle of Coca-Cola if I was having a hypo, but now I've adjusted it to only having 2 Lift tablets, would you believe it? I think there is no right time to make a positive change, especially when it comes to type 1. For some people, such as Uma, the change happens because of family and overall, ultimately, happiness. For me, my biggest change within the type 1 world has definitely been switching insulin pumps recently. I went from wearing the Omnipod to the Ipso pump when I discovered that I'm pregnant. Not in a million years would I have considered wearing a wire pump, but it's actually been so positive, and I couldn't rave about it enough. Thank you so much for listening. The podcast is written and presented by me, Manisha Vigama. The producer is Matt Wareham, and it's a Depictor production for Diabetes Squad.